I think we need another show on the podcast.
Really?
Yeah. I think that the problem really is that I'm not really suited for those types of interviews. Like an interview that interrogates, an interview that really challenges different thinkers, conservatives, liberals, those on the left, those on the right.
Interesting.
Even those Muslims who don't fall within our ideological tradition.
You don't think you can do that?
I just think it's not my style. I don't think I'm cut out for that type of interrogative.
Right.
Yeah. I suppose the question is, who's going to do it? That's my question.
I'll do it. We live in urgent times. The world order as we know it is falling apart around us. We're going to need to ask very difficult questions to get to the bottom of what's wrong with the world and how to set it right. That's why I'm teaming up with the Thinking Muslim for a new program where we're going to bring in guests, maybe not the usual suspects that you would expect. And we're not going to be asking the typical questions. We're not going to play polite. We're going to ask the hard questions that are going to get to the bottom of things. We're going to be hats off.
Microsoft is still the most embedded technological company in this genocide.
So there'll be a number of viewers who just don't understand the level with which this technology is used to contribute to the killing machine, which is Israeli military. So can you spell that out?
What Microsoft provides to the IOF and to the Israeli government, these products come together to basically generate target lists in Gaza. These systems allow the IOF to know this area is going to have the most number of journalists, for example, at this time of day. We know from their conversations that people are going to be in this tent, and then they send the bomb there.
When Ibtihal Aboussad was sacked by Microsoft for taking a very public stand over its alleged complicity with genocide, she made a decision to place Ummah and justice above her career. I met this inspirational young lady in Toronto to untangle the dilemmas so many of us face in our professional lives. Are you saying that no one with a conscience should be working for Microsoft at this stage?
We're 2 billion Muslims that could have so much power, but we're not united. I don't think there's a third option where you stay at the company and you're just, profiting off of blood paychecks.
Ibtihal Aboussad, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and welcome to the Thinking Muslim.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for having me.
Jazakallah khair. Well, I'm really excited to have you with us here on Thinking Muslim, because I think all of us saw that video went around, the viral video, really, that when you took a stand against Microsoft. You were working for Microsoft and you took a stand and you very explicitly, very openly expressed your concerns about Microsoft and their connection, indeed complicity, when it comes to genocide in Gaza. So I want to explore that entire episode, but also the wider implications of Muslims in tech, as well as, of course, Microsoft as an organization and how complicit they really are. Now, I suppose the first place to start is, you ultimately lost your job as a result of taking a stand. There are some Muslims who would probably say, who still say that, was that the most wisest thing to do? Should you not have stayed in the company and fought from within because you had more influence within a company than, say, outside a company? I mean, how would you respond to that?
Yeah, for sure. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Yeah, that is a point that I did hear a lot in the aftermath. One thing I'll say is people saw that viral moment, that public demonstration, but behind it were months of, trying to change things from the inside, as people say. We tried having petitions, we tried meeting with senior executives, we tried having, more quote unquote peaceful events on campus. We sent emails, we sent Teams messages, we did try to explore those avenues, right? Ultimately, it is better if, no one has to lose their job. Everyone is just able to make that change internally. But after a year of only seeing deaf ears or repression, employees getting suspended because of petitions, employees getting fired because of a vigil, it became clear that those methods that people say, oh, just do that. We're not going to work. So that's why, like as we're watching the genocide unfold and we're watching how terrible things are in Gaza, like we can't afford to have like a 5-year strategy to end Microsoft's complicity. It became urgent to escalate in a way that Microsoft would not be able to ignore, and like all our internal efforts.
Right. So there were Muslims, non-Muslims at Microsoft who were engaged in quiet diplomacy within Microsoft, trying to explain the sort of the links between Microsoft products and the genocide. And your argument is those voices fell on deaf ears. Like the management just were not concerned about those links. I mean, how far did you get? Like how many, when it comes to management, who did you speak to, and what were their responses?
Yeah. So we know for a fact that everyone at the top level of like the C-suite was aware of our concerns, did receive our emails or petitions. We had a group of employees, both Palestinian and non-Palestinian, meet with someone at the like second level of the company, and all we would get back is, we'll work on it, or like we'll get back to you. Like it was very much like dragging their feet on the topic. So like this is to say that like all these avenues that they prefer, that they recommend, did work, and did not work. And even at like town halls, for example, by the VPs and like everyone that's higher up, we would submit questions on Microsoft's complicity, and they would either get deleted or ignored, even though they're like the most upvoted. So clearly those preferred methods were not leading to anything.
Right. And you were protesting specifically against a Microsoft product, Azure. What is it about Azure that makes it so problematic when it comes to Israel and this genocide?
Yeah. So basically there are 3 aspects of Azure that are, that power everything that's going on in Palestine. There's the AI side, the cloud side, and the Azure storage side of things. Altogether, essentially what Microsoft provides to the IOF and to the Israeli government are customized storage solutions to be able to store calls from Palestinians all around Palestine for tracking purposes, for targeting purposes. And so these products come together to basically generate target lists in Gaza, and to aid the prison system in the West Bank in occupied Palestine. So it's essentially like a powerhouse of surveillance and of tracking, and then ultimately of targeting. Like these systems allow the IOF to know this area is going to have the most number of journalists, for example, at this time of day. We know from their conversations that people are going to be in this tent, and then they send the bomb there. So a lot of people talk about, the complicity of like the US in terms of like physical weapons, but these weapons would not, and these are not my words, like coming from Israel, like from IOF officials, they have admitted that without Microsoft's technology, the harm would not have been to this extent. Like in their words, it's like we would not have these targeting like abilities. It's all because of Microsoft.
Assalamu alaikum. This is your brother Mazen Mukhtar, CEO at Baitulmaal. Every day, our team at Baitulmaal is reminded of the countless blessings we have, one of which is you, our incredible donors. Because of you, families who once faced empty plates have shared warm meals together. Children who walked miles for water have access to clean drinking water. Communities devastated by disaster have received emergency aid when they needed it most. And in the harshest winters, your generosity has wrapped thousands in warmth and dignity. These programs were only made possible because of your compassion, your trust, and your belief in our shared humanity. On behalf of our entire team and the communities we serve, thank you for supporting our work. And thank you for turning your compassion into hope every year with Baitulmaal.
Visit btml.us/thinkingmuslim to learn more and give.
Right. Okay. So there'll be a number of viewers who just don't understand the level by which, with which this technology is used on a daily basis to surveil and to intrude and to contribute to the killing machine, which is Israeli military. So can you spell that out? You talked about biometric surveillance, facial recognition. I've heard of an app called Al Munasiq. What is it about these technologies that really hinders, if not destroys, the lives of ordinary Palestinians?
I'll say, yeah, like step one that I mentioned earlier is just it's been revealed through like extensive documentation that Microsoft like sends a customized storage solution to Unit 8200 to store the phone calls of any Palestinian in Palestine. So there's that just having access to that data, to what Palestinians are communicating.
Every
Yeah.
phone call a Palestinian
Every
makes
phone,
is
yeah,
stored.
not just Gaza, not just specific areas, all of Palestine. And the thing is, Microsoft will come out and say, "Oh, we can't control that our storage is being used this way." But the rebuttal is there are clear, like contracts that workers have access to, and there are clear words from the Israeli government about how Microsoft sat down with Unit 8200 and came up with this custom solution so that all these calls can be stored, because it is a large volume. It is a huge volume.
Yeah.
And we also have data that like the storage volume of on Microsoft Cloud increased by 60% following October 2023 by the IOF. So that's part one, is just tracking Palestinians' every move. And the crazy part is, even if you're a Palestinian, say in Canada, and you make a phone call to your family back home in Palestine, that call can also be added to this database. So it's just like a huge, like mass surveillance system that Microsoft is enabling. The other aspect, the AI aspect, really is being able to transcribe and then translate these conversations to then have summaries of our target is going to be in this place, or this area is going to be hugely populated. Because ultimately, like, what are you going to do with all these phone calls if you're not analyzing them? So that's the second chunk of Microsoft products, like the AI side of things, is to synthesize all this surveillance data for, like targeting purposes, and even like outside Gaza, to go and like kidnap Palestinians in the West Bank based on knowing their whereabouts with these phone calls.
Okay, and in direct relationship with the genocide, do we have any firm evidence that Microsoft products are being used in Gaza at this moment beyond the surveillance technologies you speak of?
Yes. One statistic we have for sure is in the 4 months before October 2023 compared to the 6 months after October 2023, the usage of Microsoft AI by the IOF multiplied by 200. So like it's not like an insignificant number where you can think it's like a coincidence. It's clearly like once this ongoing genocide began, they started resorting to AI, to generate these target lists. So it's essentially generating target lists of locations and individuals that the bombs should be sent to.
I mean, you've used the word on a number of occasions that Microsoft is complicit. That's quite a heavy claim, especially for a company that provides technology solutions. I suppose Microsoft would argue that there's huge layers of contracts here. There are services and intermediaries in between. How complicit is Microsoft when it comes to Israel and Palestine?
What's funny is, like, in Microsoft's, I guess, like, rebuttal to our accusations, they always repeat this thing that, like, oh, but we don't have control over whether our technology is misused. Like, they keep using this word misused as if it's unintentional, like they're just throwing it out there and this customer is grabbing it for nefarious purposes. But what we know is the contracts with the IOF and the meetings with the Israeli government are very, very focused on this use case. Like, Microsoft does not, it's not like the way that I would use Microsoft AI or you would. These are, and the CEO bragged about how they only finalized the surveillance contract in 10 minutes. Like, he was like, oh, we had a 10-minute meeting and it was so fruitful. So there's a level of care and attention that's given to Israel that's not given to anyone else, even from employees at Microsoft who work in support engineering, meaning any incidents and tickets. Microsoft has a dedicated team, or multiple teams actually, that are only for engineering support for these Israeli clients. So overall, like, we have a lot of evidence that Microsoft is, treating them with the utmost care. Like, it's not an unintended misuse of the technology.
I mean, of course, Microsoft is an American company. I mean, is it the most egregious American company, technology company, when it comes to collusion and complicity in this genocide with Israel and Israel's actions? I mean, are there worse offenders out there from your knowledge?
In terms of tech companies, in the words of actual Israeli officials, Microsoft is like the most helpful to them, which means like the most complicit. Like a lot of people will point to Amazon and Google and how they have Project Nimbus, which is also a cloud, like a storage contract with Israel. But what is less talked about is, sure, this contract exists, but that's in theory, but in reality, a lot of these IOF soldiers and like Israeli officials still use Microsoft Azure instead, because that was the previous contract, and they're not willing to fully switch to Amazon and Google. So in practice, Microsoft is still the most embedded technological company in this genocide. Like, and as we talked about, it's in the surveillance, it's in the target, and it's in the prison system, it's in the water theft. Like every layer of oppression of Israel, Microsoft is powering somehow. So it's not just, you know, like one aspect of the occupation of the apartheid. Like it's really just powering every aspect of the system.
Bienvenue sur The Thinking Muslim. C'est un plaisir de vous avoir parmi nous. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa ahlan bik fi barnamij al-Muslim al-Mufakkir की Thinking Muslim में आपको दोबारा खुशामदीद कहते हैं. मैं आपका आज हमारे साथ होने पर शुक्रगुजार हूँ.
I've got some really exciting news for you. My guests and I now speak Urdu, Arabic and French, with the help of AI, of course. We aim to reach a larger audience and hope to dub our archive and new programs into these languages. I need you to subscribe to these channels and help spread the word. If you want to help this project, please consider making a donation or becoming a member. Ibtihal, in your action, you spoke to a man called Mustafa Suleimani. He's head of AI or at Microsoft. Tell me a little bit about Mustafa. Like, why did you decide to focus in on Mustafa? Was it because he's got a Muslim sounding name, you know, or what is it about Mustafa that is challenging when it comes to Microsoft and its use of technology in Israel?
Yeah, there's multiple reasons that went behind, you know, disrupting Mustafa specifically. A big one is, out of all executives at Microsoft, he's the one that likes to preach the most about AI can be used for good, like
right.
just like whitewashing this image of Microsoft AI as a tool for, you know, social impact and empowering humans. That is his favorite thing to talk about. And as a matter of fact, like during the talk that I disrupted, he was going on that whole, you know, Microsoft AI is changing lives. And so like just that level of, I would say like hypocrisy, you know, and whitewashing of Microsoft's crimes made him like someone that I wanted to call out. The second thing, like as you mentioned, like Mustafa is part Syrian, always talks in every like occasion about my dad is a refugee who moved to the UK, this, that, and so it is someone who is familiar with the oppression of the West. It's someone who is familiar with, you know, having refugee family members. So just calling out, like a point that I specifically like told him is, what would your family say about this? Like you know this, like, you know, oppression, you know, war. So why are you enabling it, you know, within a separate country? And another thing is, I did work at Microsoft AI. Like that was my division within Microsoft, which ironically was sold to me as like, it's for same thing, like it's an accessibility product. It helps people with disabilities access Windows tools, etc. And then come to find out, like it's the opposite usage without our consent. So yeah.
I felt that when you did that action, it really sent a signal to large numbers of conscientious, but also Muslims, young Muslims who are working in tech. I often get questions when we do a show on finance, you know, and sort of how close some of the Islamic finance scene is with, you know, capitalist companies that are very close to Israel. And I get, a barrage of questions from young Muslims who ask, you know, how complicit am I? I'm working for Company X, and Company X has a contract with Palantir, for example. How complicit am I? Should I leave the company. That just explain the ethical responsibilities, I suppose, we have, or young Muslims, or Muslims have, or anyone has really, when it comes to becoming engineers and developers and tech workers within these platforms like Azure. Are you saying that there should be no one with a conscience should be working for Microsoft at this stage?
I think ultimately, I would say, in my opinion, like Muslims have two options. It's either you do not stay in this space, like once you find out about this complicity,
Yeah.
or you stay, but for the sake of organizing, of making a change. If you feel like you have that power, especially, for example, if someone is like a manager or like at a higher level in that company, and you think you can have an influence, then it might be better to be in that position. But I don't think there's a third option where you stay at the company and you're just, profiting off of like blood paychecks, which they ultimately are, because you don't know how much of your paycheck is coming from Israeli contracts, just taking that paycheck and staying silent on everything that's going on.
Yeah. How transparent is Microsoft? I know that you and your colleagues have tried to unearth those links between the technology, the company, and countries or states like Israel, or regimes like Israel, in the way they function in Palestinian occupied territories, Gaza, etc. But do we know really the full extent of their of this web, of these connections with Israel?
Unfortunately, no.
Right.
Every couple of months, we get some new bombshell that's dropped. Like for me personally, like the trigger that made me want to leave is when after a year and a half, we got more news about the involvement of Microsoft AI, because we initially thought it was just storage and the AI side of things is done separately. But every couple of months, essentially the complicity facts just get worse, because Microsoft is not disclosing these ties, is not disclosing these customized contracts. So it ends up being like investigative journalists and whistleblowers who have to dig and then find something more horrible as time goes by.
I should have asked you this at the beginning, but what did you do for Microsoft? Like, what was your position in Microsoft when you committed yourself to this action?
So I was a software engineer
Okay.
at Microsoft AI on the speech and translation side of things.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're a software engineer. So of course, tons of the Muslim community are full of software engineers, and we're here in Canada at the moment, and there's a brother here who's looking on, who's currently studying computer science, and it's very possible that he'll become a software engineer. That really does create a dilemma, I think, for young Muslims. Just talk us through that dilemma, like a young Muslim who's conscientious, who wants to do good for his ummah, who doesn't want his work and his handiwork or her handiwork to contribute to genocide. Like, talk us through that dilemma and how one should go about making a decision when it comes to future careers in tech.
I think there are so many aspects to that decision that end up pushing many people, including myself, when 2021, when I left college. There are a lot of factors that push folks towards big tech specifically. One of them is just career safety, like knowing you're somewhere that has a lot of roles where you can have career growth, become a VP, become this, that, that makes these safer companies attractive. There's also, frankly, just the prestige, which I think, and fortunately, is starting to fade away. Just the image of Amazon, Google, Microsoft as the best, most prestigious places you can work, which now, given their complicity, is fading away.
Yeah.
But so it's not just the students themselves that go and decide okay, I love Windows and I want to work at Microsoft. It's also these societal aspects. I would say ultimately, there are two alternatives to just going for these routes. One is, when we talk about the complicity of these companies, a lot of people will say, well, what's the alternative, right? For example, at my job, we use one of these three for our documents, for our drive, because there's just a question of what else can we use. And so I think now is a perfect time for, like talented, enthusiastic people in tech to actually build these alternatives. Like we cannot have a reliance on these genocide enabling companies for life and just beg for them to, be on the good side of history. We have so many folks that are disillusioned with the state of these companies, and it is a prime time to find collaborators and find alternatives. The other way is, like, quite frankly, like a lot of people will be like, well, if you're ruling out Google, Amazon, Palantir, Meta, like where am I going to go? But these are not even like 10% of like tech
Is that
companies
so?
like
Really?
globally. Like there are a lot of alternatives, sure, like with lesser known names. But there's just a myth that, oh, everywhere is complicit, so let me just go to Microsoft. But there are so many places that need tech talent that are not disembedded in the genocide.
Right. I'm interested in that, finding alternatives, because of course, what I've noticed is, in particular amongst younger generations, younger Muslims, Gaza has become a way of bringing people together, and we've seen amazing collaboration within the tech community and beyond, to try to find solutions to these intractable problems, these major problems that the Ummah faces. Are you arguing that we need to really think seriously about creating our own ecosystems, our own tech ecosystems, which are away from these big tech companies?
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's not just on, like recent graduates to go and like start their ventures. It's also on our institutions to help with funding, help with incubators, help with mentorship. Like it's not, I'm not saying it's just going to be like, 5 people come together and they, like change it all. It's also, I guess, like a mindset change where instead of, just hoping that things will get better in these companies, that instead like our masajid, our big donors also like put their money and their support behind creating these alternative ecosystems, for
Right.
sure.
Ibtihal, I'm pretty old school when it comes to software, and I'm reliant on Word and Excel and PowerPoint and these sorts of Microsoft products. Should I really be using Office in my day-to-day life, based on after what you've just said about this complicity, this connection between Microsoft and Israel?
Actually, in the BDS list, like Google, Amazon, Microsoft are a pressure target, and what's a priority target, meaning like top level of boycott, is just Xbox, like the gaming suite for Microsoft. And the reason for that is even like the BDS, like National Committee, realized, because again, we don't have these alternatives, and we've fallen behind in terms of creating our own tools. It is easier to just, it is more, not easier, like more possible for people to boycott like the gaming suite or like Copilot, like these things that are optional and used in your personal life, versus like Google Drive and Microsoft Word, which a lot of the times, that's set by like your employer, and there's no like, it's either use this one or this one, otherwise like you can't have a functioning like company. So even in our calls for boycott, like we're not trying to make this overwhelming and like you have to get rid of all these three, like for once and for all, like especially right now, as I mentioned, since we don't have alternatives. So it's more a focus on when you can, when it's your personal leisure or your personal like side activities, that's where we encourage people to use less developed but existing alternatives. Yeah.
So let's talk a bit about your motivation, Ibtihal, because of course, I think, subhanAllah, I mean, everyone I speak to in England, I know that's not why you did it, but everyone I speak to in this industry, they cite you and your action as a model that they aspire to, alhamdulillah. So there is a groundswell of opinion amongst the Muslim community, amongst young Muslims, that we need to be a little bit more stronger when it comes to challenging these complicit companies. How much does Islam, your faith, play in the decision you made, but also in the continuous or pursuit for justice that, alhamdulillah, seems to be really a strong part of your life? Like, what's the role of Islam here?
Yeah, definitely like a fundamental role. Like I think it's not like secular ethics that drives me to feel like, oh no, I have to do XYZ. It's essentially knowing that in Islam, it's not like a bonus thing to, you know, fight against oppression, to speak up when you're in a complicit environment. It's a full-on obligation, right? And we have multiple examples from the Quran and hadiths about how fundamental it is to change evil with your own hands. And so I would say I can't decouple the two. Like, to me, even like losing my job at Microsoft, like, is not something that, oh, I did and it's great. And I don't want to have this culture of like exceptionalism around it. I think it's just like the lowest bar we should have. Like, the bare minimum is, yeah, you worked somewhere that was complicit, you made change, essentially. So I think Islam just hammers down that it's a fundamental aspect of our religion. It's not an optional nice.
Losing your job. I mean, there will be people who say, I'm going to lose my job. Like, if I took this stand, you know, I know people who still work with Palantir. You know, they're not working in the company, but they've got a contract with Palantir, and Palantir is a very egregious company, of course. But they would say, or worse still, they work with tech companies that are linked very directly to the defense industry in Britain or Germany or in America. And again, they would argue that there is an obligation to look after their families. And so there's a personal sacrifice that may be too hard to bear. Like, talk me through that thinking process. Like, if you came across a Muslim who worked in the defense industry, which I think is very problematic, like, how would you advise them about, from an Islamic ethics perspective, about how they should proceed with those decisions?
Yeah, I think first of all, like, just to like sort of ground all this, like, to me, when we talk about like these sacrifices and like prestigious job or visa is at risk, like, none of this compares even by like 1% to the sacrifices done in, like, made in Gaza by Gazans. Like, people are losing their family members, losing their lives, losing their homes to resist occupation. And so, like, just like framing it in this context of, it might seem to people like, oh, I'm like shattering my life and this and that, but like in comparison, like, this is really like a really, really, really tiny price to pay to like fight against oppression. Does not compare at all to sacrifices in Gaza. The second thing is, and I'll quote, like, Imam Tom in one of his videos mentions, like, gives an example of, you know, we know how Islam obligates us to have tawakkul and have trust that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not let you down. But if aliens came down to earth right now and saw the state of Muslims, they would not like believe that that is something that we're commanded to do. So, and if you think about it, it is really true. Like, we have such fear of, you know, like dunya consequences, without realizing that, you know, if this job or this rizq is not meant for you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not let it reach you, versus if this rizq is meant for you, it will reach you. Now the question is just, is it going to be in a halal way or a problematic genocide type way? So I think, to me, like, it was just like, I did not have my like current job lined up before getting fired from Microsoft. It came afterwards, but just the conviction that, okay, I might get fired, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that controls what will happen afterwards. And just having the intention that you're leaving this defense job or speaking up at this defense job with like the intention of fighting against oppression in Palestine, I think we shouldn't have as many fears as we do about the consequences when that's present.
And what has been the consequences for you? Like, you've lost your job. You were based in America? Were you based in the States?
No, I was
you're based in
yeah.
Canada, right? So you lost your job. Has it shattered your life? You know, leaving Microsoft. Like, what's your life been like since?
No, like, alhamdulillah, it's been like quite the opposite. Like truly, like I saw the embodiment, alhamdulillah, of like the hadith that no one will leave something for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala except that it will be replaced with better. In that so many like organizing doors have opened up for me in terms of, you know, like getting more involved in like the fight for liberation that I did not have access to prior to this viral moment. Like that's been a huge life change. And honestly, like within, what was it, 2 weeks of getting fired, like I started a position at Yaqeen Institute, which to me is like the opposite, like pro-Palestine environment, you know, doing work for the Ummah. It's somewhere that if you made me like build like a 20-year like life plan, career plan, like maybe I would have put that at like year 20. Like it's not something I aspired to be able to join. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala facilitated it so quickly and so smoothly. So I think, and this is not to say like everyone who gets fired, you know, like finds a job within 2 weeks and whatnot. Like the consequences and the timelines are different, but just knowing that ultimately Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has got your back. And for me, like it's like half my time now is spent, you know, working with like-minded people that are fighting for Palestine, fighting for the Ummah's benefit, and the other half is direct organizing to end the genocide. So it's been transformative, alhamdulillah.
Wait. If you like this video, you're gonna love the Thinking Youth podcast, a new project by the Thinking Muslim, bringing young people, young Muslims around the world. We're talking Malaysia, Canada, Europe, and even the United States, where we get the best and brightest of young minds together to say, how can we elevate young Muslim thinking? How can we revive the Ummah? How can we make this world better? We are so excited to bring you high quality guests in these next few months that you are gonna love. So we cannot wait for your comments, your feedback, and for you to join and subscribe to the Thinking Youth podcast. Thank you very much. Now back to the show.
Tell me about the group No Azure for Apartheid. Explain that to me, please.
Yeah, so it's a group that started a little over a year ago by Microsoft workers that were essentially working to end the contracts between Microsoft and Israel. So these are individuals that tried individually to go through those avenues I mentioned, like petitions, questions, and that was to no avail. So this group formed to have like a structured group that is directly working to add pressure on Microsoft to drop these contracts. And since then, like it has really expanded and currently has current workers and former workers. Many people have been fired since the beginning of this year, or even since October of last year. And so, yeah, we just organize in different ways to just add pressure on Microsoft in multiple areas for them to realize not just that it's ethically wrong to maintain these contracts, but also that it is costly. Like you're losing employees, you're getting all your events like embarrassingly disrupted, just pulling all the levers to make it more costly for Microsoft to keep this complicity than to just, you know, disclose and divest.
You're working for Yaqeen, and I understand, I mean, I've been sort of mildly involved in this, but I understand that Yaqeen, together with a number of other organizations, are committing themselves to building collaboratives. I think they call it the GEMS Summit. Do you know anything about that? Can you tell me more about that initiative? And because it seems like it's very much bringing together not just tech people, but people from around the world in various sectors. I think they've defined 8 sectors of collaboration. Can you tell us a little bit more about GEMS, please?
Yeah, so Yaqeen, like many other organizations, including Ummatics, has identified what we were discussing of we really like are behind in terms of structures and institutional support. Like we're so scattered that we don't have, we're so many Muslims with so much talent, with so many resources, but we're not putting it all together to build alternative ecosystems, to have like our own our own talent dedicated to resolving Ummah issues. So it's essentially like trying to bridge this very honestly like sad issue that we're 2 billion Muslims that could have so much power, but we're not united. So it's all about like unity and you know, bridging different institutions together.
And so the idea is to bring to coordinate members, experts, those who are probably at the start of their career, to coordinate those energies so that we start building alternatives to what Western systems that are out there, or complicit systems that are out there. I mean, that's the idea behind GEMS, I would imagine. I understand.
Yeah, and not just in tech, like overall, like having like a united like Ummah framework for.
I mean, how important is that? Because I've noticed, I didn't quite understand this until GEMS, but it's dawned on me that probably one of the biggest problems we face is that we just don't collaborate as an Ummah. And I think you probably noticed that in the tech field. Like, speak to that, please, our lack of collaboration.
This is something that like Zionists do really well that we don't, is there's a clear set of, target goals that everyone comes together to achieve, and everyone is like dedicated to like one aspect of those like success goals. Whereas I feel like for us, I think one big issue is a lot of, I guess, sectors that have Muslims are still, I guess, still have this perception that we have no way out of working with Western tools, of working within Western systems. Like we've just accepted that, for example, like in the finance sector, like, yeah, we have to go with like these like Western like banks, and within them try to have like loopholes so that there's like Islamically okay solutions. So I think a big problem for the lack of collaboration is just that everyone is focused on collaborating with these like oppressive, non-Muslim owned like organizations, and we don't see a way out of that, which is we can just detach ourselves from all those complicit works.
And I suppose, what does success look like? If in relation to Microsoft, if you're able to achieve and meet your objectives, like what would that look like?
Our first objective is just for Microsoft to just end the current contracts with Israel. And we know that like the pressure is at an all-time high, especially because we're talking now in September. Just less than a month ago, we had like an encampment on campus. We had a sit-in, and we got word that executives are really for lack of a better word, like panicking about it, and trying for the first time, the Microsoft president reached out to the group Palestinians and Allies at Microsoft to sit down with them. And it's been 2 years or more of them trying to even get that meeting. So we know the pressure is at an all-time high. And for us, we want this to end with them just nullifying those contracts. That's step one. But then beyond that, like Microsoft is still invested in Israel in other ways, and they have data centers in Israel and offices in Israel. So I guess I would say it's like tiers, but the current urgent priority is just ending all current contracts.
Maybe one final question for you, Ibtihal. Today we've talked a lot about the complicity of Microsoft, but also, I suppose, the complicity of Muslims. We sometimes are our worst enemy when it comes to not collaborating and working for these companies and not putting our Ummah first. I suspect there are a lot of Muslims who feel uneasy about their jobs and uneasy about how they're not doing enough for Palestine, doing enough for the Ummah, doing enough when it comes to engaging their talents and expertise for the purpose, for the sake of this Ummah. Like, what's your advice to a software developer in Karachi, or a software developer, in Islamabad, or these are Pakistani country, software developer in Nigeria, in Lagos? How should what's your advice to them? How should they be thinking? What's their worldview? Maybe that's the best word. Like, how should they be thinking about not just their own careers, but how should they be thinking about the Ummah at a broader level, and their contribution to this Ummah, I suppose?
Yeah, first to address something you said, which is like a lot of people feel like they're not doing enough.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm doing enough. I don't think any of us are doing enough unless like the genocide and apartheid end. But I think instead of letting that thought like paralyze us into like defeatism and like no matter what we do, like this is just how things are in Gaza. Like I try to channel it more into just pushing myself more, like with time, into organizing more, into sacrificing more. Like we have to shift from, like I've seen in a lot of Muslim circles, just a lot of, yeah, what can we do? Like it's like it is like an overwhelming fight, but that leads people to just like, you know, throw it all out together versus how can we do even more? I'd say like that's a first mindset shift that we need, which is in one way or another, especially like out here in the West, like we are all complicit by virtue of just living here. So we don't have the option to say, you know, I'm just going to live my career and have my hobbies and someone can figure out Palestine. Like, and even if we were not complicit, even for people in non-complicit environments, it is still Islamically an obligation to change this oppression with your own hands. So I think we need this mindset shift, first of all. And then the second thing is when Islam gave us these commands, like fighting against injustice, doing good for the Ummah, like our stewardship, our khilafah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not exclude our jobs from that. It's not like your 9 to 5 is like, you know, consider that a secular endeavor, and then in your free time go to the masjid and volunteer and do this and that. Like ultimately our jobs are a majority of our waking hours, or near majority, and so we can't afford for them to just be detached from our duties towards the ummah. Your job is several hours, which on the day of judgment you will be questioned, you know, on how you used your time. And so that is, I think, a second mindset shift that we need globally. Is even for me, like growing up in a Muslim majority country, a lot of talks about like careers and jobs, like it's always like climbing up the ladder, maximizing your salary. It's never how can you like switch your position or how can you have side projects to serve the ummah. Like that was never a criterion when choosing career paths. So we really need to have that mindset shift. And then lastly, also realizing like people mobilize and organize in different ways. Like sure, a lot of people will say, I can't afford to, you know, publicly like confront an executive and have my name be doxxed and on media. Well, like to that I'll say like Vanya and I were the like, you know, public faces for the disruption on April 4th, but behind it were a couple dozen, you know, anonymous No Ajra for Apartheid organizers that helped with the logistics, the emails, the speeches. So you don't have to be, you know, on press to do something for Palestine is a misconception I want to change, because a lot of people are like, I'm not in a position to do that. That's fine. You know, behind the scenes, you can still organize with different groups to just center Palestine on a day-to-day basis.
You said something there actually I want to pick up on. There are, I mean, I see this especially amongst young Muslim males, that everyone's trying to have a side hustle. And that tends to come from, I suspect it comes from being indoctrinated by this neoliberal world where you're not just satisfied with 9 to 5, but you need to have something on the side which will give you even more money and even more ability to consume, I suppose. Your point there was, I think, quite profound. Your point is that, you know, our worldview should be the side hustle. Of course, the principal job as well has still accord with Islam, but the side hustle really has to be to serve our ummah. I like that. I mean, explain that to me, please.
It just stems from the very like simple knowledge that, you know, we will be questioned on like how every hour was spent like during this dunya. And so sure, like I could have, you know, just stayed at Microsoft where I worked not even like 40 hours a week, and then had a second job and made, you know, became like a millionaire. How is that gonna have any value, you know, after my death? Like I think we have to break out, as you said, like I don't want to like fully blame this on like us as individuals. Like there's a lot of media we consume that's pushing, especially in North America, pushing this narrative of like hustle, make as much money as possible. But the more urgent hustle right now is like Palestine's liberation. It's all the ailments in the ummah. Like I think we in the same way that I mentioned like these mindset shifts, also just having like these like akhirah like tinted glasses of like, how is this contributing to my afterlife, versus, you know, just more material pleasures and more comfort in this dunya.
Jazakallah khair. Ibtihal Aboussad. Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much for your time. May Allah accept from you
All
the
of
effort
us.
that you put in. Jazakallah khair.
وإياكم. Thank you so much for having me. Jazakallah khair.
Assalamu alaikum. Now you've reached the end of this show, and the fact that you've stayed until the very end tells me that you truly believe in our work. Please consider making a one-off donation or becoming a member by visiting thinkingmuslim.com/membership. Now your contributions give you exclusive behind-the-scenes access and the ability to ask questions to our guests, and monthly calls with myself, my team, and our guests like Sami Hamdi. Jazakallah khair and keep us in your du'as.